Hey there everyone, Scapegoat Stephen. We're going to do something a little bit different this time. So I'm just going to run through an event I attended at the weekend, sort of discuss some of the games and how they went, and just sort of my overall thoughts on the event itself. So we'll just, as you can see while I've been talking, this was my A-Force roster I took. I'm probably doing some changes to this roster post the event. I'm not sure I want to talk necessarily about the roster itself until I've sort of solidified those changes in. But who knows? Maybe next week or the week after, I'll finally get around to making that A-Force roster video that I've been threatening to make for probably the past couple of months. But if we just jump into the games, I'm going to talk about each game in sequence, what happened roughly from my obviously my memory and my recollection, and then I'll just sort of talk about the final standings, and then just a few sort of interesting stats I think that came out at the end of the event. So thanks for taking a look, and we'll jump straight into game one. So game one was versus Ian. He was running Cabal, although notably he did not have a Malekith option in here. We ran at 19 threat. I had priority, so he picked the threat level, and we had double deadly. We had deadly legacy virus cured and deadly meteors mutate civilians. I ended up with She-Hulk, Angela, Captain Marvel, and Medusa, and he took Red Skull, Baron Zemo, Kingpin, Nebula, and Ultron. So as you can see, obviously the score ended 16-2, although I think the game was probably a lot closer than that during the opening few turns, especially. I'd forgotten Ultron had fly, so I thought there was a part of the both C's on my left behind a big building that he couldn't get anyone to. Turns out Ultron could get there. Unfortunately, Ultron only has that one power, so obviously he's going to struggle to then take that. I sent Medusa up the middle, and then I sent Captain Marvel and She-Hulk to the right-hand side because only Baron Zemo had gone to that side. They obviously quite easily took care of Zemo, and basically She-Hulk spent most of the game ping-ponging backwards and forwards between the centre and the right-hand objective. Obviously, unintentionally, Angela and Medusa can't have dice modified against them, so I believe that cuts out Dark Reign, the Cabal-specific reroll card. My opponent did play it on She-Hulk and did get a reasonable amount of damage through to her, but just couldn't finish her off. I did obviously take Patch Up as well, so that kept her in the game a little bit longer. In the end, I don't think none of my characters were KO'd. I think I did have a couple of that were dazed, and yeah, it ended 16-2. Just being able to keep that deadly meteors going every turn for the 3 points, and occasionally having 2 or 3 of the deadly legacy virus vials getting me again those 2 or 3 points. I think Ian, if memory serves, is a reasonably newish player to Marvel Crisis Protocol as well. Very nice guy. Couldn't have asked for a nicer first game, to be perfectly honest. We chatted, we talked. We enjoyed the game itself. At least I did. Hopefully he did as well, despite the end score. And I was really intrigued actually by his list. I kind of got the impression it was he'd bought the core box and then some models he'd liked, and he'd put this list together. He did, like I said, he did specifically say he didn't want to use Malekith. I think he's perhaps in that camp of looking at the power level currently, or perceived power level of Malekith, and deciding, you know what, he doesn't want to do that, and he wants to try out the list, the Cabal sort of affiliation without using that, which is, let's be perfectly honest at the moment, a little bit playing on hard mode. So props to Ian to coming to an event and choosing to make that decision. At the end of the day, everyone has fun their own way, don't they? So, I certainly enjoyed the game, and I would love to play in again if we ever come across each other at other events. So that was game one. A nice, easy one to get started with. Everyone likes a win first round, settle your nerves, especially when in an environment that you're not used to. So let's check out game two. So game two ended up with A-Force versus Avengers, and I played Dave. Dave I recognised his name, and I thought I recognised his face from the Guild Ball scene. And he did confirm that after we'd finished the game, that I don't think we'd ever played each other at Guild Ball, but I think we'd both sort of travelled in roughly the same circles, because he plays in Essex and I'm in Kent, so they're reasonably close to each other. So we ended up with 15 threat. Dave had priority, so I picked the 15 threat here. I didn't really fancy playing against Avengers on 18. With the hammers or fear grips objectives, and we had gamma wave as well. So what I was looking at in this particular instance was just pick up my home hammer and then just go straight down the middle and just, beat the ever-loving crap out of the Avengers. So obviously I took She-Hulk, Crystal, and Hulk. Pretty solid 15 threat. Crystal's there to special delivery and just generally cause a nuisance with her like pushes, power generation, and being able to play those other cards for me quite easily, whilst Hulk and She-Hulk just punch and throw. That's kind of the thing, the big displacement abilities on their throws. I've found, or at least seemed to find, not many people had Indomitable in their lists. Most people had Brace and one of the other options. So rather than throwing characters into each other, I just threw them around and threw them away a lot. So obviously that keeps them away. He did have Captain America Steve Rogers as his leader, Black Cat as a nice splash, Scarlet Witch and Winter Soldier. Obviously, the worry there is that both Scarlet Witch and Winter Soldier can kick out quite a bit of damage, with Steve for some backup and Black Cat for either stagger or objective stealing scenario options. I think in the end he did have 3 of the hammers for at least the first turn, maybe even part of the second turn as well. But I ended up basically getting Hulk and She-Hulk onto his home gamma and just punching and throwing his models away, which obviously then took a lot of the hammers off him. He then zipped back into the central objective with Black Cat at the end of round 2, because I'd got Crystal on my home and both the Hulks on his gamma, and then I think I just brought She-Hulk back to the central objective and just pretty much like 2-shotted Black Cat, like one hit to daze in one turn, and then because I had priority, the following turn just KO'd her. And a very similar situation sort of happened up on his home gamma. I just kept throwing people around, throwing people away. Made sure that when fighting against Avengers, you keep Captain America and Winter Soldier more than one away from each other, because Till the End of the Line is a good card, especially on a central gamma thing. If they could have both gotten to that central gamma, or even my home gamma, I would have struggled. So my whole point was try and push them back, keep them back in their home sort of gamma shelter, maybe get a bit of gamma damage off on them, but things like, Hulk's pushes to get them away, and the throws on both Hulk and She-Hulk, really good, really solid, helped me in the scenario. Again, Dave, really nice opponent, knew what he was doing, knew I think most of my stuff as well, so it was a good game. It was very tight at times despite the score, and I think again it'd be a pleasure to play Dave again if I ever come across him in a future event. And that was a 22-8 win on game 2. So let's see what happened in game 3. So game 3, I made the mistake of flying too close to the sun in my first 2 games. I drew Pat. So anyone who's played against Pat or is aware of Pat knows that he's one of the best players of Marvel Crisis Protocol in the country. At the very least, perhaps even further afield than that. He has an amazing Cabal list. I encourage you to go listen to the Across the Bifrost podcast that he runs in conjunction with another fella. And they talk about the Cabal list in quite a recent episode. And they talk very specifically about this 18 threat list being an absolute powerhouse. I had the joy of playing into it. Now, it was 18 threat. I had priority, which was bad, I think, in this case, because it meant he got to pick threat level and he gets final activation on the turn, because we've both got 4 models. So obviously I took She-Hulk, Black Cat, Crystal and Hulk, me thinking that between She-Hulk and Hulk, hopefully they can deal with Malekith. Black Cat, again, a stagger perhaps on Malekith, and a steal option, and Crystal because she's a good mover. And he took Malekith, Baron Zemo, Juggernaut and Mystique. I cannot enthuse how good that 18 threat roster is for Cabal right now. We had an opening discussion after deployment of, so how much does deception cost, having heard about how good a card it was, and Pat just said, well, it's actually free, which is a bit of a surprise to me given it's a pretty good card. So whilst I had first activation, Black Cat went and grabbed a hammer that was on the weighted side, so on my right hand side, Pat's left, where I think he had Juggernaut. Obviously Malekith's in the middle, so Malekith can go anywhere. So I deem that a more dangerous side. So I sent Black Cat over there, at which point Mystique comes forward, deceptions Black Cat back into the middle of my opponent's team. It ended up not doing like Black Cat managed to get away, didn't get dazed or anything because Pat had other priorities that turn to go after the middle where I sent Hulk. But I ended up swinging to the left flank, and he just sort of came straight sort of down the middle and then pivoted towards me. So he pretty much had my entire right side of the board. And then we sort of fought over the middle. Again, Juggernauts, do you know who I am card, really key here. Could throw Hulk away long, so Hulk could then have to basically waste his Gamma Leap and a walk to get back into striking range. I did whiff a little on, I did get a Hulk smash off on, I think it was like a 10 dice in the end between the hammer and the damage he'd taken already from Juggernaut. And it just, it whiffed so bad. Didn't roll a single wild. The plan was obviously to have staggered Juggernaut and thrown him into Malekith, but it didn't happen. A hard fought game, but I think Pat was advantaged in this particular scenario. A player of his skill level combined with just having such a good list and playing pretty much, some crises that probably really likes. I don't need to talk about about how his Cabal list operates. Go listen to his podcast. He explains it in a lot more detail. And yeah, it's a good list. So round 3 lost to Pat. We did have a 4th round on this day. So we'll jump into round 4 and have a quick chat about that as well. So round 4 versus Erich and his Convocation. Erich was one of our international players. He came over from Vienna. 3 players came over from Vienna in Austria to join the event, and actually they were really nice, and it was really good to have that, even like though it was a smaller event, a smaller international contingent as well there, just because you get to see like the quality and skill level of a different set of players and the sorts of things that they are bringing and using. And they were just overall, they were just a joy, an absolute joy to chat with and to just, talk about things, both Marvel Crisis Protocol and other. So Erich had priority and I chose 20 threat. In hindsight, I think this was a mistake, and I think this was the end of a day of 4 games. I was perhaps not thinking correctly here, and I chose 20. I should have chose 15. I'm saying that now. I should have played a very similar list to the game I played against Pat, or maybe against Dave, even. So yeah, so the Hulk, She-Hulk, Crystal sort of combo would probably have been good. That said, I like my 20 threat: She-Hulk, Captain Marvel, Hulk, and Medusa. And I controlled basically the first 3 turns of the game. No one could find the alien ship until I think it was towards the end of round 2, and I had hold of that for most of the rest of the game, really. Erich obviously took Doctor Strange, Ancient One, Doctor Voodoo, Lizard, and Red Guardian. That combination of Doctor Strange and Red Guardian giving you an extra 2 dice, giving his models an extra 2 dice when he spends to defend, and Red Guardian obviously making me re-roll 2 dice, sort of neutered Hulk and She-Hulk's punching quite a bit. That said, by the end of the game, I had KO'd Dr. Voodoo, and we sort of done a bit of damage here and there across the others. As I said, I had been leading very well for the first 3 turns, and then it all just sort of unravelled and fell apart. Personally, I think this game was a little bit messy. I think perhaps there were times when both of us forgot things like gamma damage or bleed damage, and just generally speaking, I think we were at the end of 4 rounds, in a day, and I think perhaps it was a little bit warm in the venue. People had drinks, that sort of thing. So I think perhaps it could have been tighter, and that's a little bit of a shame because Erich was very nice to play, and as I said, all 3 of the Austrians that came over, lovely guys. So I'm a little bit disappointed in my own performance in that game, and perhaps that's colouring my opinion of the game itself. I think I chose wrongly on the threat level, and I think I could have just done much better overall during that game, maybe in the micro decisions and the turn 0 that often gets talked about. I could have done better. So I think I'm just disappointed more than anything in that, especially now I'm sort of finishing the day going 2-2, which, to be perfectly honest, most of my events I have gone 50% or better. So I was looking forward to seeing how it would go on day 2, but this is the end of day 1 and game 4. So the pairings for round 5 went up sort of quite a little bit later in the evening after we'd left the venue, but it turns out I was playing Darren. And Darren is someone I know. We used to play Guild Ball in the same circles. He used to come to events that I ran, and so Darren is someone I know. He actually came back to our accommodation, and we were sort of chatting anyway, sort of that evening over a few drinks. I think the general consensus that evening was I was probably advantaged into the game with Darren just due to the experience difference between us on both Marvel Crisis Protocol and the two relative rosters we had. But I knew more about Avengers than he knew about A-Force, although obviously we did talk about the different things that A-Force can do pre-game. He did play against my A-Force with Web Warriors as well at a previous event that we've both attended. So again, it was nice to have a game against someone I knew. You know, albeit not someone I'd seen in quite some time actually. You know, obviously he doesn't frequent my club, but he does frequent the same sort of area events. So it was nice to catch up with him. So ended up with 20 threat. He had priority. I chose the 20. I think just because I wanted to throw a bunch of models on the table. Perhaps I was trying to make up for game 4 where I performed so badly at 20 threat. And we ended up with Alien Ship and Deadly Meteors. I took the same list: She-Hulk, Captain Marvel, Hulk, Medusa. He took Captain America, Steve Rogers, Hulk, Iron Man, Vision, and Winter Soldier. What I did here was I concentrated on the 2 objectives on the right-hand side and just ignored the one on the left. So Vision spent his time, at least for the first turn, hunting down on the left. Winter Soldier came into the middle um, quite early. I think I sent Medusa to the right-hand side, and various terrain and things that were in the way meant that she was going to be mostly safe from Darren's Avengers. But then he sent everyone else basically up the middle that wasn't Vision. So Winter Soldier came in, so I airdropped She-Hulk in with special delivery via Captain Marvel. She then obviously got that free hit in on Winter Soldier. Darren then looked at Hulk and thought, let's give this a go, get some damage on She-Hulk early. Came in, 1 hit on She-Hulk, pushed her away, but did damage, so she just aggressived back in. She then activated and did 2 attacks into Hulk. You know, and obviously she can pay to have an extra dice equal to his size. So she's doing like 11 dice builders into Hulk. And then I think she threw him into Winter Soldier as well, just for good measure. You know, and I think between that throw and the punch she'd done, and we managed to daze Winter Soldier. So Iron Man came in. Again, no one's found the alien ship at this point. Everyone's just failing, unfortunately, to roll particularly well. So then I bring my Hulk in to the middle and punch his Hulk again a few times. And I think leave him on about 8 health, I think. Also, I punch his Hulk once because obviously I have to gamma launch, then walk, then punch. Steve comes in, frisbee around a bit. That's sort of the end of round 1. Round 2, it goes quite heavily in my favour. I open with She-Hulk and we daze his Hulk. So obviously that then leaves my Hulk pretty much free. His Iron Man, however, does manage to find the alien ship and then just runs away with it. I think he does his attack so he doesn't take the damage, and then he runs off. So at that point, I send Captain Marvel over and throw him backwards a bit so I can get him towards Medusa. Winter Soldier does his utmost to try and take out She-Hulk and fails. But again, you know, does quite a bit of damage. So my Hulk then just KOs his Winter Soldier. Then Steve doesn't do a lot. I can't remember. I think he just tries to attack to take out Carol, but leaves her on, I want to say, 1 health. And then my Medusa comes forward and dazes Iron Man and takes the alien ship core. Vision comes in, does some beams, but doesn't take out She-Hulk. Not quite. She's almost gone, but not quite. So I still have priority due to the order in which various characters have been dazed and KO'd. And I've got Captain Marvel sat on 10 power. So she binaries, bearing in mind she's on 1 HP as well. She binaries and does 2 rocket punches, which is does a wild stagger. Didn't need that. Straight up KOs Iron Man in 1 hit because he'd just been flipped obviously previous turn, and does dazes Steve as well with the 2 attacks, which was horrific. And it kind of went a bit downhill from there. Opponent, Darren goes with Vision. Vision does a bit of damage. Vision gets, I think he manages to take out She-Hulk at that point, dazes She-Hulk. And then I just make I Royal Decree with Medusa, attack Vision to push him away, then Royal Decree, then walk back away from Vision, so towards my bottom right-hand corner, whilst Vision and Cap are the only two Avengers left, and are both being pushed towards the top left corner. Hulk goes, he gamma leaps, hits and throws, or hits and then throws Vision. Either way, Vision proper going back to his own table corner, and then Hulk moves and takes the other deadly meteor. So I've got all three deadly meteors and the alien ship, and it just sort of cascades from there. And Darren just can't. He can't get to the alien ship. He can't get to two cores either, or two deadly meteors to try and flip them. And I feel a little bit sorry for him because obviously, I quite get along with Darren quite well. I would consider him a friend, but I think he has played against A-Force before. But I think for him it's just activation order, and I think that's definitely something that a lot of people, not just Darren, myself included, still suffer sometimes with. In the moment, you get het up or you get tunnel visioned, and you don't choose to activate arguably the right model. And I think perhaps we could all do with improving in that manner, looking perhaps at our micro decision making at the table. That was game 5, 18-0. So the worst I can do now is go 3-3 for the event, but we then go into game 6. So round 6 was against Luke. He was part of the Welsh contingent that came over for the event, which was actually, really good to see that the event had attracted people from different parts of the country. We ended up with 17 threat. I had priority, and Luke picked that 17 threat. Went with Spider Infected, or 5 objectives all over the board, and Terrigen Cloud Sweep over City. So before I go into the actual game, I'm going to say now, I think Luke was my favourite game of the entire weekend. He was such a nice guy. We had a good laugh. There were swings all over the place wildly with dice, which I'll talk about in a minute, and just thoroughly just enjoyed the game overall. It was a great game to end the day on, and a great game to end the event on. And Luke did mention actually there's an event that are looking at running next year in Wales, like a 30-person, and I'm very, very tempted on just purely on the basis of how much I enjoyed my game against him, seeing if I can make it. So I ended up with She-Hulk, Captain Marvel, Crystal, Medusa, which is my very base 17 list. It's the list I enjoy quite a lot. It's got good pushes, good throws, good movement actually. And he played Shadowlands Daredevil, Hulk, Kingpin, and Winter Soldier. So he ended up with, I think it was Kingpin and Shadowlands Daredevil going towards my left Terrigen. And I sent Medusa over there because he could only get Shadowlands to it. I think he just misplaced some models and Kingpin couldn't reach it. So I was hoping for Medusa to walk, pick up a Spider Infected, and push Shadowlands away so that he didn't score. Unfortunately, I didn't, so he didn't get 2 points off that one, round 1. But I did send Crystal to the top right of the board to grab a Spider Infected, and I think she was actually my second activation. My first activation was I put Captain Marvel in the middle of the board to get the Spider Infected in the center, and then Crystal shot off to get his one, like towards his bottom left of board, top right of me, and pinch that. Sort of baiting out, does Winter Soldier want to shoot someone and give me more power on some of my other characters? This meant that Winter Soldier was in range to shoot people and chose to stay still. And he shot up, I believe, Captain Marvel, but didn't do a lot of damage. I then sent She-Hulk to collect both the bottom right, from my perspective, Spider Infected, and then walk with her second walk to the Terrigen on the right. And so basically we ended up sort of having a fight over this Terrigen on the right between Crystal, Captain Marvel, She-Hulk versus Hulk and Winter Soldier. And on the left-hand side, Medusa got dazed very quickly the following turn by Shadowlands Daredevil and Hulk. I used Special Delivery just for a free attack and maybe like half an inch to an inch worth of movement in this turn, just to get more damage into Hulk. At one point, I think I left him on 1 health, and it was up to, I think, Crystal to land the killing blow with some of her energy shots, which she managed, thankfully, and is not the first time she's done that in a game for me. So she is probably who's the Slayer of Hulks now. I think she's all getting close to She-Hulk's level of killing Hulks for me at the moment, which is quite funny. So Kingpin left the left-hand Terrigen and came across towards the right because, Hulk was down and he needed to get over here. I had either 2 or 3 spider infected every turn on that side of the board with my 3 characters, and I had that Terrigen which was scoring 2 off. This then meant that Medusa on the left-hand side was able to get off her Spender to damage Shadowlands Daredevil and take out his little friends. He had already activated prior to Medusa activating, and he got bleed off on her, and I want to say like 3 or 4 damage. No, it would have been 3 damage. So she walked onto the Terrigen on my left hand side, did her Spender, and then took a damage from bleed. So she's on. So she was on 5 damage at that point. We get to the following turn. We've got Winter Soldier. This is like the final turn of the game. We've got Winter Soldier on the Terrigen on the right-hand side, duking it out with She-Hulk and Crystal and Captain Marvel. Everyone's on really low health. Kingpin is also set to come out. In fact, has just double walked, so he is also right near this Terrigen on the right-hand side. I have priority. I activate. He has priority, and he has to pick. Does he go with Kingpin, Winter Soldier, or Shadowlands Daredevil? I think he makes the right choice, but I think it didn't pan out, but I think he made the right choice. He went with Winter Soldier, and Winter Soldier basically had enough power by the end of doing everything to do 2 Red Furies. So he'd managed to daze She-Hulk, who I took one of the Red Furies on because I just wanted to keep Crystal alive. He then did 4 damage to Crystal between the physical attack and the 2 gunshots. So that, at this point in the game, She-Hulk is dazed. Captain Marvel and Crystal are both on their injured side. Crystal's on 1 health with bleed. Medusa on the other side of the board is on 1 health with bleed. Shadowlands Daredevil at this point is on 1 health. His Hulk is gone, he's KO'd. His Winter Soldier, I can't even remember if he'd taken any damage, to be perfectly honest. But his Kingpin was fighting fit. So I go with Medusa. To win the game, Medusa has to put 1 damage into Shadowlands Daredevil, and then she has to shake bleed. That is the only way that this is happening. And she gets it. And it is so unbelievably close. She just gets the 1 damage. I can't throw Shadowlands Daredevil into anything to do the damage because my opponent has brace. And I need to do the 1 attack and the shake action. And she's not going to survive on 1 health if Shadowlands Daredevil comes back to attack her. And she gets it, and she dazes Shadowlands Daredevil. And now Kingpin and Winter Soldier are literally almost on top of the Terrigen on the right-hand side of the board. So there's no way they're getting back across. So Kingpin, incensed by this, the fact that he knows he's going to lose, absolutely just goes crazy. He headbutts Captain Marvel and does 3 damage. He then does his Hail to the King Spender, KOs Captain Marvel, but not before throwing her into Crystal and KOing Crystal as well. So we end the game with a dazed Shadowlands Daredevil, a 1 health Medusa, and a healthy Kingpin and Winter Soldier. And that's it. Everyone else is KO'd. It was such a bloodbath, and it was such a close game. And I'm so happy that that was my final game of the day. As I said, Luke was a lovely guy to play. And, on the strength of how nice he was, I am so tempted to see if I can get to this Welsh event next year. That's a great game. Ended 17-11. So that was 4 wins, 2 losses over the course of the weekend. Like I said, happy with losing to Pat in the sense of how good Pat is. And he massively outplayed me in that game. I'm disappointed with my game 4, my other loss, just generally speaking, because of how I played and how I did the choice of the threat level and everything. But if we now have a look at how the final standings ended up. So final standings, obviously Pat came first, completely undefeated, 6-0 player. We had 1-5-1, and then we had 6 4-2s over the course of the event. I'm really happy to say I came sixth, especially with A-Force, which I know are apparently deemed a reasonably low win percentage level, or 40%, whatever it was that recently someone looked at and made a video about. I can't remember who it was now. Might have been Rich Mid Gaming. I'm really happy with my performance with A-Force at the moment. They are my primary faction, so obviously I do have a lot of experience using them into people. The thing I really liked about this is 3rd place, 5th place, 6th place, and 8th place. All 4 of us are from the same club out of the 24-player event. I think that shows that actually my club mates, we definitely fostered a good performance level of Marvel Crisis Protocol, and definitely help each other build ourselves up and our lists up, and sort of regularly discuss tactics and tweaks and things like that. Really nice to see 2 of the Austrians as well joining us in the 4-2 and 5-1 category respectively. So great for them having come over. Erich, who I played round 4, also came. He might have even come 9th, actually. I think he was in the 3-3 top of the 3-3 bracket. So obviously they all performed very well. So yeah, it was a great event overall. Well deserved win by Pat, and the quality of the sort of the top 5 was great. They all played really well. Really nice to chat to. So I've got a couple of other things I just want to briefly talk about before I end the video. So just some quick and dirty meta stats. 24 players, 6 rounds. There were 27 recorded on the Longshanks, but I think we had 2 drops, and 1 was basically a buy player that was there as a ringer, so wasn't needed. 7 players had the Cabal affiliation option. 7 Malekiths appeared. Only 5 in Cabal affiliated rosters, 2 of the non, therefore, were splash options for Malekith. 8 players with a 4-2 or better record. 4 of them had Malekith. Obviously, Pat in first, 5th place, 7th place, and 8th place. The top 5 actually consisted of a Cabal Brotherhood list, which was Pat's, an X-Men list, a Shield list, an Avengers list, all 3 mono-affiliated, and then an Asgard Guardians Avengers list with a Malekith splash. So I know Malekith gets talked about a lot as this big, bad, scary thing, and to be perfectly honest, I do struggle against him as well, and I will freely admit I have been salty about Malekith in the past. But once you get to an equal skill level, if we're looking at all these people that went 4-2 or better, and making the perhaps assumption that they are all of a reasonably equal skill level, obviously some people will always be better than others, but there are 3 players there that did not even bring Malekith as an option. So I think that probably says something at his balance level for an equal skill level. Perhaps we need to look at, does he create or foster an environment against less skilled players? That perhaps means, does that mean for the vast majority of people he feels overpowering and all-consuming? So do you look at it like that and say, we don't necessarily need to bring Malekith's power down because people have found ways around him, or do we need to bring him down because people are finding ways around him, but only if they're good at the game? I still struggle into Malekith. I'm not gonna say that I don't, and I will. I'll go on record and say I would prefer that he came down a little bit in power, but I don't think he needs to come down a lot. Little tweak here and there should sort him. But evidence here. Okay, 4 of the top 8 players had Malekith in some shape or form, but only 2 of the top 5 did. And we are still saying that there are 3 players, out of the top 8 that didn't have Malekith, that were playing Malekith but didn't breach that 4-2. So he's not by any means a straight click and win button, although it probably does make things easier. So thanks for watching, and hopefully I will do one of these again in the future if I do go to any other events or bigger events in the short term. I obviously have attended about 9 different events over the last 9 months, but I haven't done this for those because I didn't necessarily feel those were big enough, perhaps. Although maybe I should have for some other events. And one day maybe I'll get around to that A-Force roster video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.